Hello and welcome to Lumicor's Wall Protection installation video. In this video we will cover how to install Lumicor Wall Protection and its corresponding trim options. Follow along with the printed Lumicor Wall Protection installation guide for added insights and installation tips. Before we start, there are a couple things we need to check prior to installing your Lumicor Wall Protection to ensure it properly adheres to the wall. For the storage of Lumicor panels, do not roll the panels. Materials should be stored flat and in their original packaging. Additionally, storage climate should be between 65 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit and below 80% relative humidity. Lastly, examine the goods to ensure their pattern, color, quantity, and quality are as ordered prior to cutting or applying adhesive to the panel. Now that our wall protection panels have conditioned to their environment, it's time to review the tools needed for install. Here's a list of the tools and materials needed to install Lumicor Wall Protection. Please note you'll need additional cutting tools depending on the type of trim you choose for your wall protection panels, whether that be aluminum or vinyl. We'll touch on how to cut your wall protection trim a little later in the video. In the meantime, let's dive into the steps necessary to install the sheet. The first step is to prepare the surface for installation to ensure it is clean, dry, relatively smooth, and structurally sound. Loose paint and other wall coverings also must be removed. In addition, nail heads, nicks, gouges, and other surface imperfections should be sanded smooth using a sanding block so the panels properly adhere to the wall. Measure and outline the area where the material is going to be applied. Use a level and a straight edge to outline the top edge. Then use a carpenter's square to mark the vertical edges of the panels to determine where the seams will be. Next, it is time to measure and create cut sizes for the wall protection sheets. When measuring and cutting, make sure to accommodate the panels and trim, leaving them with enough room for expansion and contraction. Leave a 1/16 of an inch expansion gap for inside trim pieces, between sheets, at door jambs and baseboards, as well as around cutouts for outlets and fixtures. In cases where areas are subject to temperature variations, such as interior surfaces of exterior walls, an expansion gap of 1/8 of an inch minimum must be allowed on all sides of the sheet. A good example of an interior surface on an exterior wall would be any wall featuring a window to the outside. Once sheets have been measured, they are ready to be cut. Wall protection can be cut using a sharp, heavy-duty utility knife. Some additional cutting options include a table saw or a router. For more information on these options, please refer to Lumicor's cutting guidelines. When cutting wall protection sheets with a utility knife, resist the urge to puncture all the way through with one pass. Instead, make a light pass with your knife to score a shallow cut line. Then continue to make several slow, steady passes with your knife until your panel is cut to the appropriate size. Once the sheet has been cut to size, it's time to dry fit the piece to the wall to ensure it fits. Check to ensure the outlets have been cut out and they match up. If installing fixtures like handrails, drill oversized holes to allow for thermal expansion and contraction. Now that the sheets have been cut to the appropriate size, it's time to measure the trim pieces to match the length and height of the sheet. The tools recommended to cut the trim will depend on the type of trim chosen for your project, the contour of the wall, and the tools that are available to you. Whether your trim is vinyl or aluminum, we've outlined a couple of different cutting strategies you can use to cut, notch, miter, and sand pieces to their appropriate size. For vinyl trim, you can use tin snips or a razor blade to cut the trim to length and notch it to ensure the two trim pieces fit together snugly. Since our project incorporates aluminum trim, we've outlined a couple different cutting strategies to use depending on your project's tool availability. To cut aluminum trim pieces to length, you can use a hacksaw, bandsaw, miter saw with a metal cutting blade, or a Dremel with a 1.5 inch reinforced cutoff wheel. We elected to use a Dremel to cut the trim's vertical dividers and top caps to size. Use two hands when operating the Dremel to ensure a clean cut, taking care not to damage the facing portion of the top cap. After the trim has been cut to length, sand the edges clean to remove any burrs. Take a look how these trim pieces fit together before proceeding to notch your trim pieces yourself. To start, mark the area on the back side of the top cap you'd like to notch out. Next, let's cover how to notch your trim using tin snips before circling back to our Dremel and cutoff wheel. Follow your cut lines, making sure not to damage the underlying channel that holds the wall protection sheets into place. Here's another perspective of what this cut may look like. Complete your notch by snipping away the remaining portion of trim, allowing the top cap to easily fit above the trim's divider bars. Now let's circle back to cover how to notch our trim using a Dremel and cutoff wheel. Same rules apply. Use two hands to ensure a clean cut, and take care not to damage the underlying channel that holds the wall protection sheet into place. Complete the notch by cutting away the remaining portion of trim, again being mindful not to damage its underlying channel. Check your work by sliding trim pieces together to ensure a good fit before adhering the sheets to the wall. When fitting the trim to the sheet, remember to allow a 1/16 of an inch for expansion and contraction. For walls with corner applications, a miter cut is recommended. This can be accomplished using a miter saw with a metal cutting blade or a hacksaw with a miter box. Prior to any adhesive being applied, make sure your work surface is clean and dry. Once your surface is ready, remove the clear masking from both sides of your wall protection sheet and apply the adhesive. Now that the sheets and trim pieces have been cut and the masking has been removed, it's time to apply the adhesive. The recommended wall protection adhesive is Type Bond Green Choice Fast Grab FRP adhesive. This is often found at local hardware stores. This adhesive has a 20-minute work life and can be easily applied using a recommended 3/16 by 1/4 deep spaced 1/2 inch CC trowel. Apply the adhesive to the wall protection sheet rather than to the wall itself. Spread the adhesive evenly across the sheet surface using your trowel angled at a 45-degree angle to create the correct depth and coverage for the trowel's ribs. When installing wall protection, it may be easiest to add the vertical trim portions prior to the sheet being adhered to the wall. This technique comes in particularly handy when installing the sheet into a corner. If you elect to put the vertical trim on first, immediately follow up by sliding its corresponding top cap over the panel's top edge. Before rolling the sheet, check to make sure you are aligned for the proper expansion and contraction clearances. After applying the sheet to the wall, roll the entire surface with a heavy-duty pressure roller. Start from the center of the sheet and work out towards the sides, being cautious to prevent air pockets from forming underneath the surface. Once you have finished rolling, adjust the trim with a straight edge to ensure the trim's top cap is straight. Wipe away any adhesive residue with a sponge and water. Do not allow adhesive to dry on the surface of your Lumicor wall protection panels or tools. Refer to adhesive manufacturer's recommendations for removal of excess adhesive and layout marks. Take care not to allow solvent to contact your Lumicor panels. Use clean rags or sponges to avoid redepositing the adhesive's residue. Rinse and clean the area thoroughly with water. And that's it. You've just installed your first sheet of Lumicor wall protection. Repeat these steps as needed until you have completed the entire installation. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more videos from Lumicor.